June 7th, 2023. This is the S&P 500 E-Futures Mini on the NinjaTrader 8 platform on the 2000 tick chart. If you don't want to watch the entire video, and I can't blame you, just go down to the descriptions below and you'll see where I marked up timestamped where I thought I saw setups as well as where I took my trades. And I know this is mainly just a kind of a trading journal archive for myself because I do not to be a narcissist or anything, I do go back and watch my videos on specific setups or days because I want to improve as a trader. But I just want to put it out there, if you're on this channel and you're watching, I make no claims about my expertise, my guarantees. I'm not guaranteeing anything. I'm not trying to teach anyone anything. Mainly, I'm just trying to teach myself. And I just want to point out that if you're watching this video, just know that trading futures, stocks, options, or anything else is risky. So don't take anything that I say or any setups or whatever I saw as any kind of guidance or promotion that you should be following me. I am only following me. So just want to get that out of the way. I'll toss up a risk disclosure soon, one of these days, just to kind of clarify, just because I don't want anybody getting in trouble, mainly myself. And I don't want anyone to end up losing money. So just want to throw that out there. Just if you're watching these videos, just for the most part, entertainment purposes only. And hopefully maybe you learn something and you can compare against your own trading. So having said that and getting that out of the way, this is what the market looked like today. There were no real financial economic data that came out to cause any major shakeups in the market. This is the pre-market lows and the pre-market highs that I marked out. Actually, the pre-market highs was a little bit lower, closer to, got it locked, closer to, oh man, all right. I'll just go ahead and remark it right now. Pre-market highs were actually right here. But then I actually dragged it up a little bit later, but you're going to notice that the pre-market highs don't really come into play. So it wasn't even that important. So I'm going to go ahead and delete it. You can kind of ignore it. It did make a double top up at the beginning, but it didn't really create any setups or trades. So there was, in the pre-market, it kind of moved up in two legs. I saw kind of a measured move. Then it sold off pretty steadily for about 3 hours. I mean, there was some corrections, but for the most part, I found this channel and sold off, consolidated in this kind of choppy region, continued the sell-off, and then for the next, I would say, hour and a half, or about 3 hours, it just kind of chopped sideways in this trading range. I took a total of 4 trades today. Excuse me. I took a total of 3 trades today. They're the ones marked with these squares. Third trade here, second trade, and first trade. I lost on my first trade, and then I won on my next 2 trades. So I'm going to go ahead and go through each setup and each trade right now. Again, just go down to the timestamps. Don't listen to me ramble, because I also just go to my own timestamps when I'm looking for a particular setup. So this is what the market looked like in the beginning. I'm not here to trade the pre-market, so even though if I saw a setup, I mark it up later. If whether it's good, bad, or something set up, I didn't take that trade. So I'm working at Pacific Standard Time. The market opens. Prices kind of chop around. You could argue, there's a new high here, first entry long, second entry long. Technically, it's a third entry long, but you can see it as just one leg down, push up, and the second leg down, and then another push up. But I also tend to avoid the first couple of minutes of the open unless there's just an undeniably great setup. If it's just an iffy setup or so-so, I tend to avoid it just because during the first minute, right at the open of regular trading hours, things can be very volatile. So I usually just leave that alone. Again, unless I see some kind of undeniably clean, high probability setup. And unfortunately, that didn't show up today. So prices chopped up, pulled back, made a second leg up, chopped in this trading range, and I saw a new high here. It comes down, it makes a first entry long right here, goes up, pulls back, makes a second entry long right here. And it pulls up, and I thought I saw a second entry long that failed. So this is what I saw in real time. Now, why would I be looking for a short? Well, it did kind of double top at the high right here. And I was thinking this could potentially be a trading range. It clearly didn't make a measured move just yet. It fell short of it. But when it couldn't break through the top here, I was thinking, okay, there's a first entry long, second entry long. Potentially, there might be a failure because the EMA is kind of keeping prices down. So unfortunately, when I took this trade, because it ended up being a losing trade, I saw this as a failure. So it's first entry long, second entry long, it fails. But there's no second entry short to confirm it. So technically, I should have waited for a lower high. But when I saw this, I thought, okay, potentially it's going to be a failure. There's enough room to get down here. So I didn't take the trade immediately. I ended up taking the trade. I put my entry one tick below this guy, this signal bar here, and I got filled a little bit late. So when I went back and looked at how many ticks were available, this is at 49.99. So I would have entered at 49.99, 42.99.50, and for a quick 1 point scalp, I would have probably just put it about 5 ticks down. So from here, I would be looking to get out at 42.98.25. And 42.98.25 was available because it actually makes its way all the way down to 42.97.75. However, since I entered the trade late, I already pushed my limit further down. So this ended up being a losing trade on what I thought was a good setup for a quick 1 point scalp. So this is due to hesitation because I didn't jump in fast enough when I saw this signal bar form. And when this was oscillating, I waited for this to close. Then I did put my entry one tick up, but I chased it a little bit, and that ended up being a second tick down, or second tick below the entry that I wanted. That was, well, in hindsight, that wasn't good. I should have just left it alone. So then prices continue moving up. So you can see I entered here and I got stopped out right up here. So one tick above this guy. And then as you've known, as many people will probably can relate to, you're correct on the direction that you think it's going to go, but of course it stops you out, then it goes down where you thought it was going to go. So here, in hindsight, just for myself, it's just first entry long, second entry long, failure. I should have waited potentially for a second entry short setup or a higher low, a lower high to kind of confirm. But I also missed the trade just because if I missed the trade, I should have just let it go. Then prices continue moving down. I draw this top resistance because there's two touches. I'm wondering if there's going to be a third. And at the time, I didn't have this way down here. It was actually higher up. And I treated this as an overshoot. Then prices continue moving. It comes up. It almost touches the third time, but at the time, I think I probably had it angled a little bit differently, so it probably did touch. And eventually, I dragged it down to here. Prices continue moving down. It chops. I don't see a good setup that I like. Technically, there's a new high here. It's a first entry long and a second entry long, but this is kind of down here at the bottom. And yes, you could be buying the bottom, but it only confirmed one time below here, even though this technically is the midline of this trading range. There's just not enough confidence that there's enough reaction down here for me to take a trade, even though technically it was a second entry long right here. As prices continue moving, I'm just sitting on my hands, trying to be patient, trying to look for a good setup. So technically it touched once, twice. Whether you argue it's a third touch or not depends on how you drew the trend line and trend channel, but for sure it touched a third time. So you could say it touched a third time or a fourth time. So this is a valid resistance. And the channel, we haven't had confirmation at the bottom yet, but at least you know prices are reacting and being rejected off this. So if there's a good setup coming up, you could say it's like a new low, first entry short, if you group this together, because technically the second entry short happens here, but you see is one leg up, pull back, second leg up. So it's first entry short, second entry short. I saw this, but I wasn't ready to take this trade, even though it engulfed this entire green candle. If you had the entry one tick below, you would not have entered yet. Still, it makes this triple top or triple bottom right here. And finally, on this candle, you would have entered and it would have worked out. But I saw this, I just wanted to let it play out because I wasn't 100% sure. So when I'm not 100% sure, I try to rein in my enthusiasm to try to take a trade and just wait. Prices continue chopping. It touches the bottom down here now. So it confirms once. However you drew it, it's 2 times, 3 times now. Keep in mind, you don't have to have it exactly touched to the tick. If it's close enough, it's usually pretty accurate. Then prices continue chopping down. It breaks out. There's a small overshoot. So now I'm wondering if there's going to be enough power to push back up to the top. But I keep in mind that this overshoot is pretty tiny. So I did see a new low here grouped together. First entry short, second entry short forms right here. So it's the second entry short. I was thinking this is actually pretty decent. If I take an entry one tick below, it makes a double bottom. I want to take one tick below and write it down to here for a quick scalp. However, I didn't like that it stopped kind of at a double bottom, micro double bottom. So I wanted to see what the next candle looked like. This next candle was actually pretty decent. So I thought, okay, well, I want to actually take this trade. And this is a good signal bar, which would be this guy. And it's going with trend, and there's enough room to the bottom, and the EMA right now looks like it's keeping prices down. There was some violations previously, but overall the EMA is doing a pretty good job of pulling prices back down and below. So I tried to enter, but I didn't get filled. I entered when this one opened and flashed up and went right back down. I entered, so I dropped my order a little late. It was one tick below, and unfortunately I missed this trade. It goes down. It would have gotten a good fill, and I would have gotten the scalp. But I also saw that when this moved, I already canceled. So when it flashed down and I saw this, I said, okay, the trade has gone on without me. I'm just going to go ahead and cancel. Then I saw this lower high potentially setting up, and it flashed down, and I was just kind of asleep at the wheel, and I unfortunately didn't have my order ready to take this, because if you had one tick below, you would have been able to take it. However, I also hesitated in that I didn't like this setup as much as I like the second entry short setup, because even though it's a good signal bar, it's already too close to this recent bottom. And this recent bottom already made a double bottom, micro double bottom, and bounced up. So that made me hesitate, thinking there's really not that much room. You would be technically buying, or you'd be technically selling into the bottom. Plus, this micro double bottom coincides with the pre-market low. So it had held previously pre-market, and then it held the second time here. So knowing that, I just thought, well, this trade has already been missed. This is a lower high. This lower high is useful in that it helps you stay confident in your entry up here. But unfortunately, I already missed that entry, so this isn't a second chance, I thought, to take that entry. So on top of that, it also had a channel, had touched once, touched the second time, broke out, potentially is touching a third time. So if I took a short here, it could bounce up. So knowing all that, it just felt like there were more cons than there were pros to take that trade. Turns out this would have worked though. Of course, you don't know that. It makes a second breakout, pulls back. Oh, I also want to point out, I saw this as one. So I'm looking for big legs, big measured moves. I did see this guy, measured move here, and I drew the second one here. So also, when I saw this kind of complete, I thought maybe the downtrend had played out. Maybe there's going to be a small correction. Also, there's a breakout, so it might pull back and try to reach the other side. Of course, you don't know that for sure, but it's just something you can be looking for. Kind of consolidates, it moves up. I draw the second, not the second. I draw another trend channel going up as one touch, two touch. And at the top, I wasn't really sure where it was. I had this at one time, but then I had this overshoot, and I thought it's a little early for an overshoot, so I went ahead and dragged it up a little higher. It confirmed one touch, two touch. So now I have two touches at the bottom, two touches at the top. It kind of confirms the third time. So I'm pretty confident this is a resistance on this channel going up. This came down. There's no clean setup here, but this is pretty nice that it came off two key entry points, the ascending trend line as well as the EMA. Unfortunately, I didn't see a very clean, obvious setup. Prices then broke down and went through. This is where I take my second trade. I saw a new high here, first entry long, pulls back, makes a second entry long. And right here, the second entry long technically has not failed yet. So this second entry long is still in play. So I was watching for a failure though, because the overall bias of the market is clearly trending down now. You could argue that it's in this giant trading range, but this trading range isn't 100% confirmed yet. So even though this is a trading range possibility, I was thinking more likely it might pull back down. So I had my order ready. And so I do enter. So when this candle prints, I enter. It's hard to see, but there's a magenta triangle right here, as well as magenta purple arrow. So this is actually where I take my short, one tick below. And I'm thinking there's enough room to down here, to go down here, as well as enough room to bounce off the bottom of the pre-market. Goes down, I exit right here. So I was pretty happy with that trade. It bounces off the pre-market lows as, you might think it could possibly do. Prices continue chopping. It goes up, touches this again, and notice that this trend line is being respected pretty well now. So anytime now that it comes up to this, I'm going to be looking to potentially go for a short. But I want to keep in mind that it has already made a breakout and it is having a little bit more trouble fading back down to the lows as well as down to this bottom of the channel. So even though I'll be looking for a short, I want pretty much a bulletproof setup. Otherwise, I'd probably get nervous in my trade. I saw a new low here. First entry short technically is a second entry short, but I also saw it as a push up, one leg down. So this group together is first entry short, push up, second entry short here. I saw this, but I felt I didn't want to take an entry because unlike this entry here, which was higher, this one already feels like it's coming down to this pre-market low, which has proven in the past to kind of hold. Even though it was a breakout, there was kind of a strength. The buyers were coming in to kind of support this line. So I definitely didn't want to take a short there. Prices continue moving down. And right here, again, it bounces up. And this time it breaks out. I saw this as one leg up. And I was looking for potential second leg up. And I actually had this measured move drawn right here to go up. And it kind of makes it almost to the top. And it makes the measured move to the tick now. So I did see the second entry short from this new low. First entry short comes up. Potentially a second entry short. This is like a inverted cross. It's, it opened and closed right at the same tick. So it's looking pretty bearish right now. So I thought it was a possible trade, but it was a little aggressive. It's also at the top of the measured move. So it's kind of convincing me, okay, there's a short here. It's a break of this shortened trend channel, broke outside, but it went back in and closed back inside. So it breaks a second time. And so I'm thinking, does it have enough bearish selling power to come all the way back down? Because technically it broke out and it kind of went back in and made a new high, right? So if you had taken this trade, you wouldn't have gotten filled yet. You'd still be waiting if you took one tick below. And here you would have gotten filled. And here, when I saw this, I was thinking maybe there's a trade here. If I put one entry below there, or if I at least put one tick above here as a possible trade, one tick below this original signal, and try to write it down to the EMA. Unfortunately, it's happened very quickly that I didn't even have time to really decide. It kind of flashed and then went, and then it continued going down. So I wasn't on top of my game to capitalize on this trade, but that's okay. This trade is better than a red trade, I guess, but it was a possible trade. It also felt like, you might be picking the top to go short because even though there's a first entry short right here, the second entry short, I wanted something a little cleaner, but it just didn't quite set up right. But maybe with more experience, it would have been more obvious. So prices continue going down. I draw the shortened trend channel coming down. It breaks out. I saw this setup and I thought this is like actually a pretty, excuse me, a pretty decent setup right here because you have a new high here, comes all the way down. You have a first entry long, then a second entry long. But you also have a new low here, first entry short. It's getting set up for a second entry short because when you have a first entry long and a second entry long, it fails. It's about to fail the second entry long. So here, definitely it created a first entry short, second entry short, flash down, also created a first entry long, second entry long failure. However, this bar, unless you took it on the engulfing one tick below this guy, it'd be very, very risky to try to take it one tick below after this candle had already closed. So I think it was a possible trade if you were fast enough and you can recognize what's happening, because from here down to here is enough room for a quick 1-point scalp. But if you waited for this to close, the whole dynamics of the trade has changed because you are breaking below this pre-market low, but it doesn't say that it couldn't flash back up. So I saw the trade. Unfortunately, I wasn't fast enough to see it in time to take the trade, but it looks like it would have worked. And then prices continue moving down. It chops left and right. It's kind of it keeps kind of falling into these smaller trend channels. It was a little choppy. It wasn't as obvious, but it wasn't that obvious, and it was a little disheartening seeing some of these big moves, knowing that if you had found a good entry, you could have ridden them down. But unfortunately, that's just the way it turned out. There was a new low here, first entry short, second entry short, but this signal bar is terrible. Also a new high here, first entry long. You don't get a second entry long until here. But taking a second entry long into the EMA already on a very bearish downtrend seems like it'd be counter trend trading, so I left that alone. And then you don't get a failure till about here. So it's the first entry, second entry long here, and it technically fails on this candle, but here you're making new lows, and I don't want to be selling into the lows. Then prices keep going up. Well, prices went down, now flash back up, makes a break, makes a new high. So now it comes back down, first entry long, second entry long, technically a third entry long, and it seems like it's consolidating down here, but there's no trade that I see that sets up. Continues moving down. Prices keep chopping. It falls into these two legs down. I draw the measured move. I saw one leg down, pull back, a second leg down. So it does complete it. It's also within this downtrend now. I also saw this as a new low, first entry short, second entry short. Now this second entry short, I thought was probably a potential trade because it's a strong bearish bar and engulfed the previous bullish bar. So whatever the bulls did on this green candle, the bears came in and they took everything back. And it's also coming off this key entry point, which is this descending resistance line. So that was a pretty good indication like, wow, there's some real push to try to push things down. It also closed below the EMA. So it was like third test, closed below the EMA, clean second entry short. I thought this was actually a, reasonably good trade to have taken. And even though there's a small overshoot, depending on how you drew it, it didn't really seem like it would affect it too much that it pushed out to this side because it already made two clean legs up, one leg up, pull back, second leg up. So this is a trade that I think if I was more on top of my game, I should have taken. So unfortunately, I skipped that trade, or I just didn't get on that trade. Prices continue moving down. It kind of consolidates. I'm thinking maybe there's this support down here. It wasn't necessarily a trading range yet, but I just saw that it was resistance or support down here. And I saw a new low here, first entry short, second entry short. And at the time, I actually had this. Let me put that back. Well, you can actually see it from the midline. I had something close to be about right here where this midline dotted is, and I thought it might be a fail breakout. So whether it's a fail breakout or not, we know for sure it is a second entry short from the new low, first entry short, second entry short. Now, unfortunately, I kind of skipped this trade because even though it's like second entry short, this signal bar is kind of too neutral for my liking. So I was thinking look for a confirmation setup in a higher low, and it shows up right here. So this higher low does show up, and I thought there was a possible trade here because it confirms a second entry short. Whether it's a failed breakout or not is debatable, but it does break out of this descending trend line. So you could say that. But then also it rejected right off of here for the higher low, and it closed a pretty decent signal bar, and there's enough room to get to the bottom. So I thought this was a possible trade, but I didn't see this. I mean, I saw it in time, but I, for whatever reason, just hesitated. I think I was just in a mentally a little bit tired, so I didn't pull the trigger. So that was kind of on me. This trade was just kind of there for me to take, but I unfortunately didn't take it. And then prices continue. They chop up. They kind of make this double top. So I dragged the original top of my trading range, which is here, because I treated this as a potential fail breakout, and I thought this might have been a fail breakout, and I dragged it up to here. So I had at least a double touch at the top. Now it's a triple touch, but then it breaks out, and I saw potentially one leg up, pull back, and I'm thinking a second leg up. Will it make it to the top? I also saw this new low here, first entry short, second entry short, two clean legs. It also is bouncing off the bottom of this pre-market low. So I'm wondering, is there enough power by the bulls to make it back into this trading range? However, this trading range doesn't seem to be very important at this point because it's already late in the trading day. There's only about 2 more hours left, and it didn't really make another attempt to get back this high. So at that time, I was thinking maybe this is going to act as a resistance because unless it breaks into this range decisively to act as a support, it might actually act as a resistance. However, what was confusing previously is it didn't react too much to this line. I mean, it acted as 2 bounce points, 2 supports here, and a third support here, but it broke down here, and then it spent so much time outside that. So it was hard for me to really trust it, but I did see this set up, and I thought, okay, this is potentially a second entry short. It might be a failed breakout of this larger trading range. So actually, let me just relabel this as second entry short, fail breakout. Now I know what happens afterwards, but so I would be thinking this at the time. And after it flashed down, then I would have labeled it as a failed breakout. But since we already know what's happening, I saw it as a failed breakout, definitely worth a trade here. It would have moved down. And then it creates, I was saying, okay, look for a higher low, excuse me, a lower high. So this high is a little bit lower than this. It's probably also entering into this trading range. However, what I didn't like when this candle formed, it has confirmed that the lower high is made. It flashed down and it went below and closed right at the EMA. So there was some buying power that came back up. Had this closed more decisively low, I think I would have ventured to take a trade one tick below. Ideally, I'd want to put it one tick above here, but I would put it one tick below this guy if it had closed a little bit more bearish and I felt more confident. But fortunately, it didn't quite do that, so I waited. And then on the next candle, it flashed, but then I saw maybe here's my opportunity. It's a new high, first entry long, second entry long. EMA may or may not be holding. Here I was deciding, okay, when I saw this and during the life of this candle, it flashed down and it was kind of oscillating down here, but it was kind of bouncing around below this doji looking, this green candle with a small body. So I actually entered one tick below here. It's a little hard to see, but there's a little purple triangle here. That's where I entered. And I thought, okay, obviously prices are coming down, it's coming back into the trading range. I missed these two entries, but the market's offering me another chance here. It's a first entry long, second entry long failure. There's also a new low, first entry short, second entry short, right here, first entry short, second entry short, and plus a lower high. And I missed those two chances. This is a third chance. I shouldn't let it go by. I entered and I was able to get out down here. No runner, just took the entire position off, comes down, kind of bounces around. I saw a potential support right here. So it comes down, there's new low, first entry short, second entry short, but this is a terrible signal bar. It's also a new high, first entry long, second entry long, technically a third entry long. So I'm just staying out of that mess. Comes up, it almost touches the top and it flashes back down. And now this is where I draw this blue line. I thought I saw a triple test here, but there's no clean second entry. There's like a new high and you only get a first entry. Technically, you have a second entry here, but it felt like I wasn't really sure where prices were at that time because it was right in the middle of this trading range, the midline. So whether it comes back down, makes one leg down, pulls back, and here it easily could have just made a second leg back down. So I wasn't sure, so I left it alone. Turns out it would have worked going long. And it goes up, and I do see a potential second entry short fail breakout again, just because there's another fail breakout here. There's a new low here. You don't get a first entry short till right here. Goes up, and I'm thinking there's a potential second entry short because I'm always just keeping an eye out. This wasn't labeled yet. And then here, you get a second entry short. So I was thinking, oh, well, there's a second entry short, fail breakout. It completed a measured move, first leg up, second leg up. It's not necessarily the best signal bar, but this trigger bar was pretty awesome. But I wasn't, I just wasn't ready because I was just kind of slacking on the job, so to speak, and I didn't take this trade. But if I did, seeing this, I would think I would have been okay taking one tick below here, and there would have been enough room to the EMA. So it looks like if I took it, I would have gotten filled and I would have gotten the trade. It bounced right off the EMA, then it continued moving down, then chops, and I also saw this. New high, first entry long, second entry long, potentially a failure. Also a new low, first entry short, second entry short. But the way I counted it was it's probably also just one leg up, pull back, and potentially a second leg. So here it would have been a failed second entry long, but I don't know that you want to enter on this candle because now it's again at the midline and it has shown support in the past right here. So to take a short here would have felt risky. So if you wanted to short, I think you would have taken it right here. But this signal bar isn't the most convincing. And if you did have your order up here, you wouldn't have gotten filled. And prices continuing going down, kind of chops around, and you're already pretty late in the day. So I wasn't looking to take any more trades after that, and it goes into the close. So it was kind of an interesting day. It was very, very quiet the first couple of hours where I didn't really see too many trades. And then There were a few trades, a few setups, and then it was kind of quiet around here. And then toward the last 2 hours, I think I saw a few more setups. So hopefully that was helpful.